Gururbrahma, Gururvishnu, Gururdevo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Atpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedyadravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So where are we in our text?
Chapter 7, number 268.
And Ganesh, can you be our chanter this evening, please?
Yeah. Yeah, just 1 minute. Okay, sorry, I forgot the text. Okay, chapter 7.
Yes, page number 268.
268. Chapter 7, 268. Okay. Page 334. Okay. Athava kritakrityopi lokanugrahakamyaya shastriyenaiva margena varteham kamamakshati. Or there is no harm if I engage myself in doing good to the world, following the scriptural injunctions, even though I have obtained all that was to be obtained.
So the subject that's under discussion is, should the woman or the man of steady wisdom be doing actions? If they're doing actions, is it impelled by desire? Isn't the mark of the man of wisdom that all the vasanas are roasted? Desire is the result of vasana. So if they're seen to be doing things, all activity under all circumstances is the result of desire. What's going on here? And frankly, I think Vidyaranya is making it a little bit overcomplicated. So what other scriptures talk about are what we call roasted vasanas. And we get two metaphors, two examples. We get a burnt length of rope or roasted seeds. So a rope is something that you can tie somebody up with. But if you burn a length of rope, it still looks like a rope, but it's ash. You can't tie anybody up with it. Or you can go get, say, some alfalfa seeds, and you can put them in a pot and sprout them, and you can grow your own alfalfa sprouts. But if you put them in a frying pan and you roast them, they will not sprout. So, the way to make this, I think, a lot simpler is to understand the two powers of vasana. The first power of a vasana is Avarana Shakti, which is the non-apprehension of myself nature. The second power is Vikshepa Shakti, projecting power. As the result of the Avarana Shakti, the first idea that gets projected is Jiva Bhavana. I think I'm a person. From that comes all sorts of the other stuff, the desires, the activities, etc. So for the person of wisdom, the Avarana Shakti is gone. I don't think I'm a person anymore. It's gone. And that first projection, the Jiva Bhavana, is gone. Now, that doesn't mean the Chidabhasa, the reflection of consciousness in the intellect, isn't there. The person of steady wisdom still has activity in the world, but it's simply the result of the force of the past. It's no longer ego-prompted activity. What do I mean by ego-prompted activity? I'm Jin. And with that feeling is incompleteness. I'm restless, I'm discontent, I'm annoyed with the world, and I feel that I'm not enough. Then desire becomes serious business. Activity becomes serious business. I must have this in order to be happy. And the actions that I take are very serious. Then I'm caught up in success and failure, what other people think about it, and all that sort of nonsense. But for the person of wisdom, of course they're going to act in the world. How will they act? Prarabdha karma, impelled by the force of the past, but even more importantly, by the desires of other people. But there's no investment of future well-being in the outcome of the activity. So a man of wisdom, a woman of wisdom may be seen to be doing very little, like a snake who's just eaten a meal, just lying there. They may be fond of samadhi. They may wander around with a begging bowl as a bhikshu. But they may be a householder. In old-timey days, maybe having, an agrarian responsibility, children, educating their kids, stuff like that. In today's world, you've got a profession. But the orientation is completely different. There's no longer this vancha, this wanting coming from some emptiness. some spiritual impoverishment within the human bosom. Or they may be like Swamiji, serving society. Even Lord Krishna was a politician, deeply involved in the politics of his day in Dwarka. So I think this is the point that he's getting at. So what do we want to pay attention to? Again, Shankara will say it is the annihilation of the vasanas here and now that's considered liberation by the wise. How do I know if I've still got vasana? If at times I think I'm a person. It's really simple. If I think I'm a person, Avarana Shakti is operative, non-apprehension of my self-nature. Vikshepa Shakti, that Jiva Bhavana, I think I'm a person. And almost always some goal arises at the same time. It's serious business. But what I would invite us to do, if you could just for a moment, just tune up the mind. And think of how good a mango would taste right now. Nice, sweet mango. Now, did you lose knowledge of yourself about thinking about how tasty a mango is? Hopefully not. So, in the end, desire and its resulting action are not an impediment to self-realization. It's ego prompted activity. And that means you're identified with the ego. Jiva Bhavana. I think this is a little bit clearer way to explain what I think Vidyaranya is driving at. Any thoughts on this subject? Was this useful? Yes. All right, next verse.
Deva Chanasnana Shaucham. Deva Chanasnana Shaucha. Bhikshado Vatatam Vapu Tara Japatuva Tadvat Pathatvam Nayamastakam. Let my body worship God. Take baths, preserve cleanliness, or beg for alms. Let my mind recite Om or study the Upanishads.
I think this needs to be connected to the next one. The idea is what I like to say, put the android, put the robot on automatic pilot. Now, you may recite mantras, take sacred baths, perform rituals, simply because of the force of habit. Things you've done in other lives. For example, the seeker does spiritual practices so that they can purify the mind and realize the self. But the man or woman of knowledge may also be seen to be doing spiritual practices. But it doesn't add to their knowledge of the self in any way, shape, or form. It's just for them the highest form of worldly pleasure. And what that may look like, it doesn't have to be breaking open the Vedanta scriptures. For example, Swami Tejamayananda, as brilliant a mind as he has, what a fine Vedantin he is, he's really a bhakta. Put him up there with his harmonium, and well, he just sings Ram and off he goes, you know. That's his way of reveling in the self. Or you may use none of those tools. Swami Tapovanam, it was being with nature. Up in the Himalayas, walking through the forests with nothing. Other saints, again, are fond of samadhi. Ramakrishna, you merely mention the word God, oh, off you go. And why the differences? Force of the past. That's all it is. Now, should I or should I not continue to do sadhana? Abhyasa vairagya cha. What is the indicator for me to continue to do sadhana? One, if you still have doubts. Two, if you are a jnani of tenuous mind, a third class jnani, not technically a jivan mukta. What is the mark of the third class jnani? Sometimes I know, and then my mind gets covered by ignorance and I get re-identified. And then I suffer like any fool. And then my ignorance is dispelled and I remember, oh yeah, I'm Brahman. You come to. Then it may be of value. Continue to do tapas so you can be sthita prajna, a person of steady wisdom. Eradicate that ancient impression that I am the doer. Now, once you're a person of steady wisdom, one of the marks of the person of steady wisdom is they've given up making efforts. They meet another Mahatma whose samadhi is so much deeper than yours. If you're inspired to practice, knock yourself out. But these post-enlightenment samadhis are not to be achieved by will or effort. They're karmic. And in fact, if you're making efforts, you're not even a jnani yet. but you may not be able to help yourself. You just keep desiring to be further immersed into the infinite. Great punya, if that's your desire. That's subecha, auspicious desire. But the mark of the man of wisdom, he's no longer attached to mind states, including samadhi. Next verse.
Vishnum Vishnum dhyayatu dhirya va brahmanande viliyatam sakshyaham kinchit apyatra na kurvenapi karaye. Let my intellect meditate on Vishnu or be submerged in the bliss of Brahman. I am the witness of all. I do nothing nor cause anything to be done.
Yes. So if it is your nature to be immersed in Brahman, lucky you. But your samadhi may be very shallow, or only when you meditate in the morning. Each person works this out for themselves. But if, for example, you read scriptures about nirvikalpa samadhi and you haven't had it yet, or you don't think you've had it yet, you make it some goal, and then you start striving for this. I really need this. I really need this. Then you're caught up as a suffering person again. You just now have some spiritual object of desire. It's very paradoxical. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, Jim, this is David. Hi.
Hi, David.
I've got a question about that striving that you're talking about, and how would you distinguish between that and mumukshutva?
Mumukshutva is a useful mind state at an early stage of our practice. It is the burning desire for liberation. But the mark of the man of wisdom is he knows who he is. He knows where happiness is. Or when we study Viveka Chudamani, he warns us. He says, let there be no talk of liberation if your mind is still extroverting into the objects. Only you can decide that, whether or not you're taking the world seriously still. If you're taking the world seriously, you might be happier if you practice some detachment. So, rather than looking at some endpoint, perhaps, these are all things you get to figure out for yourself. Maybe it's more useful to say, how can I maximize serenity, peace of mind today? Well, that's pretty simple. If a personal idea self arises, drop it. An attachment arises and I start to suffer because of it, drop it. And I like to say, don't try to be a realized person. Realize, remember, notice that you are Brahman. You are not a person, you're Brahman. You tune up the mind and look within. Is there any David there? Nope. But if through the day David arises and he's got issues, you got work to do. We have to be careful of what I call the Vedanta logic loop. Well, realization occurs in the world of illusion, so it isn't real anyway. So my ego isn't real. The loss of ego isn't real. I think I'll just get drunk and shoot heroin then. And then that's not freedom. Not freedom in the least. That's fooling ourselves. So going back to, well, when should I give up the mumukshu? When all your doubts are gone. I got a secret for you. When you make the decision not to believe your mind, that's when all the doubts are gone. If you still believe your mind will continue to throw up doubt. Yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but what about that? When you really grasp, I cannot think a real thought. Sarvamaya, Sarvamananda. It's all Maya. It's all this. Was that useful, David? He's gone.
No, I'm here. I'm just trying to think if it's useful. I mean, that makes sense. And I guess what I'm taking away from that is don't get caught in the trap of striving for some achievement. Something to be achieved by, a person, myself as a person, right? But
well, it's
if I see that
paradoxical.
arising, just, what is there to give up right now?
That's where I would focus on it.
Okay, thank you.
And we hasten slowly. You hear all these stories about the old guy who holds the disciple under the water. You've got to want it that bad. But David, and maybe I'm wrong, but I have the sense that there are times when you're pretty clear about your essential nature. You don't doubt.
Your statement about the third class is that rings very true, right? The whole yo-yo state where, sometimes things are very clear, and then sometimes, I'm very concerned about something that's happening with my daughter, right? And that's very real, right? And so
Yeah.
and very, very much back and forth right now.
Well, there is a very famous story about a particular rishi who was well known for his great detachment and his abidance in the self. And one of his children died, and he wailed with grief. And one of his disciples said, I thought all this was an illusion. How come you're weeping? And the rishi says, it is all illusion, but this was a super illusion. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Something happens with your daughter and you get concerned. Don't worry about it. Other people, their children go through crises and they don't get upset. I'll give you a very real example. You know, I deal with alcoholics and addicts all the time. You have no idea how difficult it is for a parent to let go of trying to rescue their addicted child. There's a whole program for it called Al-Anon. But it's possible. It's possible to love your children and know you can't fix them. Now, that doesn't mean we are not responsible adults. How old are your kids now, David?
They are 9 and 11 right now.
I can't believe it.
Me neither.
They grew up. What happened? So it doesn't mean you don't take them to the doctor. You aren't aware of what's going on at school, you know, making sure who their playmates are and things like that. Of course you do these things. You do your best.
Sure. No, I think what I see is just there are certain things in day-to-day life. You know, when I get out of my meditation seat and I start going out in the world where all of a sudden I'm deep in the dream, right? And it's beginningless and I'm just kind of swept away. And then it takes something, it's a while until I come back, right? So
Well, and that may never end. You may go to your grave as a third-class jnani. But let me draw you another parallel. Since we have David Silva online.
he is.
David Silva, are you there?
He is still online.
He doesn't have his microphone on. Anyway, what I was going to ask him, it's pretty much standard practice for a surgeon not to do surgery on their own family member. Why do you think so? Because they're too attached.
It clouds judgment is what I can say. Internists also shouldn't be diagnosing their own family.
Yes, yes. Your emotions cloud your judgment. You're a doctor too, I forgot, Mark. But see, in the medical profession, tradition has shown them the value of detachment. It's everybody works it out themselves. That's all I can say, David. All right, next verse.
एवं च कलह कुत्र संभवेत् कर्मिणो मम विभिन्न विषयत्वेन पूर्वा परसमुद्रवत्. How can there be any conflict between the actor and myself? Our functions are as apart from each other as the Eastern from the Western Ocean.
Yes. So the idea here is the body and its actions, the mind and its reactions, the intellect, along with the sense of agency. None of it belongs to me. What concern have I for the stupid mind states of this piece of equipment? One of the things that I really found fascinating and helpful, Swamiji would say, the mind is a sewer. He did not say your mind is a sewer. He said the mind is a sewer. But the mark of the man of wisdom is he lets the poop go by. So back to your idea, David, if you can practice discrimination in the midst of those triggering events, they're ever in front of you. They do not touch you.
I like that. I really like the analogy of letting the poop just flow by. That's gonna be a useful one.
All right, next verse.
Vapurvagbhishu nirbandha कर्मिणो न तु साक्षिणी ज्ञानिनः साक्ष्यलेपत्वे nirbandho नेतरत्र हि. An advocate of action is mainly concerned with the body, the organs of speech, the intellect, and with karma. He is not concerned with the witness consciousness, whereas the illumined one is concerned with the associationless witness, not with other things.
Yes. So there are those people who are morally focused. Nothing wrong with that. And they're concerned with good and bad actions and thoughts and feelings, purifying our actions, thoughts, and feelings. And listen carefully. In early stages of our spiritual life, this is critically important. I'm working with a young man who's involved in another yoga tradition. And he was over at their particular center doing arti, and he stole a book out of the library. You know, these things arise. Good news is he told me about it. And I said to him, take the book back. So he calls me today. Take the book back? I didn't tell him I took it. It's out of the library in a reading room thing. But at least he took it back. It's appropriate at that level for him to learn not to steal. But I don't think as we get further on in the path, these sorts of things are necessarily what's agitating our minds. No judgment, just watch it. At one level, yeah, try not to be a jerk. I was reading one commentary or listening to one appropriately, and they boiled down all the yamas and niyamas to one principle: ahimsa. Just try not to hurt other people or hurt your own equipment, yourself, small ones. That goes a long way. But for the jnani or the jnana yogi, I have no relationship with this body, mind, intellect. What concern have I for its joys and sorrows, its honors and its dishonors, its successes and failures. Chidananda Rupa, I am bliss consciousness, ever separate from equipment. Next verse.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Hold on. So the verse that we ended on last time, right before we started this one, is he says, I am not concerned with what the past actions make me do, whether in accordance or with or against the social or scriptural codes. So that makes me think that he doesn't care if he's immoral or not.
Well,
And so I understand that you are completely detached. You don't care what the body does, but
let's speak more realistically. Let's say that you grew up as a meat eater, and you know that basically the tradition suggests that you be vegetarian. And you find that it's hard to do for you. What I think Vidyaranya is saying is, if you can be vegetarian, that's very wonderful. But it's a greater pop-up to be beating yourself up because you can't live up to some standard. You know, it's not about becoming a goody-goody. Who pops into my mind is Nisargadatta Maharaj, a great saint who was a smoker. Eventually, it killed him. He died of throat cancer. But there would be disciples say, why do you continue to smoke? Why don't you give it up? Just, it doesn't rob me of self-experience. There's no need to do it. I smoke.
but he didn't rob or steal or other things to other people that did damage to other people.
Well, who's to say? I know he deserted his family and went marching towards the Himalayas, but then he came back. I don't know the particulars of that. Chances are, if you're a man of wisdom and you see yourself in everyone, you are not likely to be an immoral person.
Right.
But you're not living as a goody-goody.
Yeah, I see that.
I think he's more talking about things like at Shivaratri, the Jews stay up all night chanting Rudram Chamakam. No. I have nothing to gain by staying up all night chanting. But on the other hand, I want to get together with a bunch of people and do that particular ritual, knock yourself out.
Yeah, I was generalizing it more to like moral standards, like treat others as you would treat yourself and stuff like that.
Yeah. But there's an intuitive sense of what's right. Let me give you another example. I have nothing to gain from any religious ritual. Yet, when I was in Jaipur with Devdutt in 2015 and hanging out with Bhuvaneshwarananda, the guru in that ashram, every night they would do arati. He was a man of knowledge. He's sitting there, he did not participate in it. My intuitive sense would be, it would be rude for me not to participate in arati. Would have agitated people's mind. Why isn't Jim participating? It was no effort to get up and sing along. They weren't even my gurus, but I did it out of respect because it felt right. But I was not required to. Are you catching the sense of it, Mark?
Yeah, no, I see that.
And what Vidyaranya is pushing back against is in a culture where the spirituality and the religion are all tied together. So if someone, see, in many, many ashrams, you start your spiritual journey by taking sannyas. In the Chinmaya mission, you go take the course, you become a brahmachari, and then when you get much more stable, then you're given sannyas. But in many other traditions, you start by taking sannyas. But people get all identified and attached to it, especially, let's say, if you came from a lower class family. All of a sudden, people are treating you, oh, Swamiji, and it's very heavy. You have status in the community that you wouldn't have had if you were, pushing a plow behind a cow. So people can get involved in the trappings of spirituality. And that has a whole new bundle of attachments. This is not just India, by the way. This is all over the world. And then many of those people will say, oh, this is what the holy people do. The yucky people, they don't do these things. And Vidyaranya is saying, no, we're going to get out of all this. There are no niyatam karmas prescribed for the man of knowledge. Yet he may be seen to do them. Swamiji used to let people do pada puja. He didn't in the early days, but he quit fighting them after a while. Pada puja is when people do a ritual to worship the feet of the guru.
Yeah, I did that with him.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Did he gain anything by it? No. I suspect at some level he thought it was a bit on the silly side. But it's what the devotees needed to do.
Yeah, he was very present when I met him that way. Well, thank you very much.
Good question. Good question. And when we silence the two trumpets in our ears of raga and vesha, gimme, 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 no, then we can listen to what the prophet Isaiah called the still small voice. Our sense of rightness, the intuitive sense. You'll know what's right to do. And the yogi learns to trust that implicitly. But He's gone through the process of attaining to Yoga Rudha. So he's willing to do anything for the rest of eternity, and he's willing to not do anything for the rest of eternity. He is not tyrannized by the raga and the dvesha. There's no investment in the outcome. Another real life example. When Swamiji would fly across the Atlantic, he flew first class. And when the flight attendant would come by, he would order a scotch and water. Many of the devotees, oh, Swamiji's having a drink. He liked good scotch. He had one. And he only had it when he was flying across the ocean. He enjoyed it. Oh, but he drank alcohol. That's against the rules. All right, next verse.
Can I share something?
Please. You'll have to speak loudly so people can hear.
Yes. So how I actually take that verse personally, because I struggle a lot, coming from not just harming people but also the animals. That standard sometimes brings lots of agitation because of the identification to the perfection. So how I take that verse is not striving for morality, but letting go of the perfection and the desire for the outcome.
The perfectionism.
Perfection.
Yes. 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 That doesn't mean you don't strive for your ideal. And you got to let the other people deal with the karma they have. All right, next verse.
Evam chanyo na vrittanta anabhigno badhi badhiraviva vivadetam buddhimanto hasantyeva vilokyatau. If the advocates of karma and jnana, without understanding the difference of their topics, enter into a dispute, they're like two deaf persons quarreling. The illumined ones only laugh at seeing them.
Yes. So those who say you must do these righteous actions, and they're in dispute with those who say there are no rules for the person of realization, leave me alone. The illumined person steps back. For the man of wisdom, there is no real conflict. All right, next verse.
Yam karmena vijanati sakshinah tasya tattvavid brahmatvam buddhyatamam tatra karminah kim vihiyate. Let the knower of truth know the witness consciousness whom the karmi does not recognize as Brahman. What does the karmi lose by this?
Yes. So if a person is engaged in the effort to practice righteous action and frequently get other people to practice righteous action, we let them do it. For God's sake, the world's a better place if people quit acting like jerks. But for the man or woman of wisdom, if I have a dream that I see an axe murder, when I wake up, I see the fundamental unreality. That doesn't mean we run around telling people what you're doing is unreal. Makes no sense to other people. But you know if you've got attachment and identification. And remember that deep spiritual axiom. If I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the klesha, with the affliction. Next verse.
देह्वाबुद्ध्यस्त्यक्ता ज्ञानिना नृतबद्धितः कर्मी प्रवर्तयत्वाभिर्ज्ञानिनो हीयते किम्. The illumined man has rejected the body, speech, and mind as unreal. What does he lose if a believer in action makes use of them?
Yes. So we have no need to argue with anybody. Someone has this particular viewpoint, someone else has that particular viewpoint. Someone lives this particular lifestyle, someone else lives that one. This particular person is an anti-vaxxer. Someone else has a deep belief in Western medicine. The man of wisdom stays out of it. Such is the great variety of human experience. And that can even be within our own Vedanta tradition. I'm a non-dualist. Someone were to ask me about ISKCON and the Bhagavad Gita as it is from that tradition, it's not my favorite. But if that's the one that appeals to you, wonderful. Worship Krishna. That's a great thing to do, is to worship Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's not what we Advaitins would interpret the Gita as. But, better you worship Krishna than worship crack. We have no argument. Next verse.
Pravrittir nopayukta chet nivrittir kopayujyate bodhetur nivrittischa bubhutyayam tathetara. The knower of truth has no use for, doubt. The knower of truth has no use for getting engaged in action. Reply, what use has actionlessness? Doubt. Absence of action is a help to the acquisition of knowledge. Reply, action too is helpful in the search after knowledge.
So there are those people who interpret sannyas as refraining from all action. What the yogi understands is restraint in and of itself is problematic. In Gita, Krishna says, every being is impelled into action helplessly by the force of prakriti, their nature. What can restraint do? In the beginning, of course, you're going to act, and you're going to act on your desires. What the tradition says, there's an intelligent way to act on your desires. But avoiding the world is not a path to freedom. Should I become a sannyasi and leave the world? If you're called to it, if you're called to the life of a grahastha as a householder, all of the rishis who gave us the Upanishads, all of them without exception were householders. Only you can decide within whether you're just following your prarabdha or this is ego prompted desire. I am a person, I feel discontent, and I believe those people, places, things, and conditions are going to make me happy, and struggling toward the mysterious business and don't get in my way. Next verse.
बुद्धश्चेन्न बुभुत्सेत नाप्यसौ बुध्यते पुनः आबाधादात् नुवर्तेत बोधो न त्वन्यसाधनात्. Doubt. Once the truth is known, there is no further desire to know it, and so he has no need for action. Reply. He has not to know again, and so he has no need for inaction. The knowledge of truth remains unobstructed and needs nothing further to revive it.
Yes. So either you know who you are or you don't. And you know that the dharma of the body is karma. Bodies that don't have karma are called corpses. In the chapter 3 of Gita, we deal with what is action in the midst of actionlessness, what is actionlessness in the midst of action. The very cessation of action is an action. And I promise you, if you don't get to the toilet, you're going to mess your pants. There is no escape from action at the level of the body. But I do nothing. I am kutastha, the term that he used earlier. still and immovable like a mountain. I watch this body, who may be involved in activity. It may be sitting in meditation. What I've done is give up my concern for it all. Next verse.
बाधितं दृश्यतामक्षैः तेन बाधो न दृश्यते जीवन्नाकुर्नमार्जारं हन्ति हन्यात् कथं मृतः. The realm of duality, destroyed by knowledge, may still be perceived by the senses, but such perception does not affect illumination. A living rat cannot kill a cat. Then how can it do so when dead?
That's very funny. So again, the way I like to say it, in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it's like snake in the rope. The mind has stopped, so there's no perception of an individuality, no perception of a phenomenal world. Only I remain. When I apprehend the rope, the snake is not available for perception. But mirage waters in the desert, when I'm in ignorance, my senses report water, and my knowledge is ignorant. I think there's water. But when I realize it's a mirage, my senses continue to report water. My knowledge is sand. So for the person of wisdom, they can see the world. The body, mind, intellect can act in the world. But I know Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real. All the phenomena is unreal. I have no concern for it. Next verse.
अपि पाशुपतास्त्रेण विद्धच्छेन ममारयः निष्फलेषु वितुन्नाङ्गो नङ्क्ष्यतीत्यत्र का प्रमाम्. When a man is so invulnerable that even the mighty weapon Pashupata cannot kill him, how can you say that he will be killed by an edgeless weapon?
So the idea here is there's a reference to something in Hindu mythology. I do not know the story that he's referencing. But the idea here is the self is never touched. If I imagine that I have a dream child that doesn't exist, it cannot be killed in the dream automobile accident. Why should I be concerned? And again, we act appropriately in the world. If a friend has a relative who's passed away, we play our part. Oh, I'm so sorry. That must be very difficult. How can I be of support? We don't say, Nobody dies. It's all an illusion. And the same thing with any level of the world of transactions. But one person of wisdom with another, of what concern is there for the world and the illusion. All right, we'll quit here. What verse are we on for next week?
281.
Wait,
Okay, we might actually finish next week. This chapter, that is. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namah. Hari Om.